and welcome to the Mulligan Stew podcast. I'm Terry David Mulligan. We ask that you subscribe on Spotify, Google Play, or Apple Podcasts, and every week the podcast will come to you. And I hope you enjoy if it gives you pleasure and information. It's Bob Dylan's birthday, Monday the 24th of May. It's almost impossible to capsulize how he has affected our lives, our thoughts, our feelings, our clarity over the years, but 80 years of making music, and literally put out one of the strongest albums he's ever done, Rough and Rowdy Ways, just last year, with a 17-minute single that was number one. Just ridiculous. Anyway, it's Bob's birthday, so we've gathered up some thoughts together from David Bowie, Robbie Robertson, Susan Tedeschi, Derek Trucks, the Avett Brothers, Colin Linden, who played with Bob Dylan on tour, and Greg Keeler from Blue Rodeo, and Barney Bentall and Steve Dawson, who put together a live version of Blood on the Tracks in Vancouver. Here are the comments about Bob Dylan. In 2013, Colin Linden, you joined Bob Dylan's road band for 11 tour dates. And Mr. Dylan is going to be celebrating shortly his 80th birthday, which is quite astonishing when you think about it. I know you were a fan of Bob Dylan for a long time, and you accepted this a challenge and this road trip as just one of those touchstones that musicians, humans, like to have close to their heart. What were your feelings going in? Describe what it was like working with Bob. Any relationship notes that you had, and the lasting legacy on the other side. I'll get out of the way.
Okay, well, I had, since I was really a young teen and was aware of people accompanying other people, I dreamt about playing with Bob because I loved his music so much. And of course, I loved the band, and I loved how Robbie Robertson played with Bob Dylan. And I remember when the Basement Tapes first was released officially, the Basement Tapes album, thinking that was just the greatest thing. And also, even earlier than that, before the Flood tour in 1973-74, I saw it. I believe the date was January the 11th. It might have been the 14th, the second of the two nights at Maple Leaf Gardens, and it was so fantastic. And of course, I'd been listening to Bob's music my whole life. So, but that really galvanized it for me. So I had wanted to play with him for over 40 years by the time that I did. And because of the circumstances, I had no sound check and no rehearsal by the time of the first show, which was at the Molson Amphitheater in Toronto, which was such a serendipitous situation. It was the eve of the 30th anniversary of my wife and I getting together, and my family, my brother Jay was there with his partner Peggy, and Johnny and Gary, my best friends John Diamond and Gary Craig were there, and my sisters-in-law and Janice flew up for it, and it was really a wonderful experience. And the band and Bob were all so welcoming to me, and I felt like I just, even though I hadn't played with them by the time I got on stage, I felt that there was a very welcoming and focused environment. And, Tony Garnier, the band leader, and
Sure.
George Rosselli, the drummer, were just, they were so great to play with. Actually, the whole band was. They were really great. And Bob Dylan is a fantastic musician and a fantastic band leader. If anyone ever questions that, because he's such a tremendous, monstrously talented genius and important artist and songwriter, if you take just the musician part of it, he's absolutely masterful, and the band leader part of it, he's absolutely masterful. So it was very exciting, and it was a wonderful experience.
I was thinking about Tony Garnier because I know he would be, because he is the band leader. Bob needs somebody who sort of keeps, is the band leader. He's the Duke Ellington of the damn band, And you would have asked him a couple of things. You wanted to know the key, obviously. You wanted to know the tempo. What kind of information did you ask him about in terms of the tunes? Because I think we all knew the tunes, but when you have to play the damn thing, it's a different thing.
Well, I think for starters, you use your ears and you don't assume anything about what you think the song might go like or how you think it might be. You follow your nose that way. But Tony was very good at cueing, and Bob is very, very good himself. So I mean, I think that there were things that I could kind of detect, and Tony actually gave me so much information about how to just be focused on where the moment is. But a lot of it is just keeping your eyes, keeping your eyes on Bob and keeping your eyes on Tony. For me,
Sure.
That was those two things, especially in the first few shows. So they were very, very engaged, and all of the players were, and couldn't have asked for a better group of people to be with.
Colin Linden in Nashville, TD Mulligan, Mulligan Stew, CKUA Radio, the Mulligan Stew podcast. Now, 11 dates. How much did the set list change?
It changed a certain amount. There were certain parts of the show that were, in that particular tour that were pretty similar. We started with Things Have Changed every night, and there were certain things that were similar, but there were a lot of changes too. And it was subtle. Sometimes there would be four or five songs different night per night.
Okay. And did Bob ever call out a song just off the top of his head?
I'm trying to think. I don't know if he did or not. I think sometimes it would be shortly before the set,
Yeah.
Like an hour or two. There were also, because the tour that I did was called the Americana Rama, or the Americana, I think it was called Americana Rama.
Yeah.
And Wilco were on the show, and My Morning Jacket. And most of the shows, Ryan Bingham opened. One of them, Richard Thompson, opened. But usually somebody from one of the earlier bands would come up and do a song. And very often that song changed. The first night was in Toronto. Bob wanted to do the great gospel song that I've always associated with Reverend Gary Davis, 12 Gates to the City.
Right.
And which, of course, I knew from Reverend Gary Davis. So it was a real great common point. It was a wonderful thing. And, all of the earlier, Ryan Bingham and Jeff Tweedy and Jim James all came out to join Bob for that. And it was great. He wrote some Toronto-centric lyrics to it. I remember that. He made some reference to Massey Hall and I think the Princess Gates or something like that.
Okay.
I think so. I know that there was a Massey Hall reference, and it was great. So it was really memorable.
Did you get a shot with him? Did anybody take a photo of you and Bob together?
Not a posed shot, no. But I've seen a number of pictures.
Okay.
From that people have taken and sent me over the years.
Okay.
From being on stage, and
now,
it's great to have something to remember it.
Here's the last two. Here's the last two Bob questions. One is,
okay,
what song from that set list were you dying to play? You just wanted to get inside of it.
Oh man, there were so many. Although I think the couple that came to mind. Can I say two?
Yeah, sure you can.
One was High Water.
Okay.
From Love and Theft.
Right.
Because it was sort of inspired by Charlie Patton,
yeah, that's right.
And Charlie Patton is so near and dear to my heart. I've spent 50 years playing, close to 50 years playing Charlie Patton music almost every day of my life. And it was I was encouraged really go there with my playing, and I felt like it felt wonderful to play. So
Okay.
that was a really great one for me to play. And She Belongs to Me was another one that really jumped out. The way that he played it, he was playing it at that particular time, reminded me sort of a Waylon Jennings approach. And I was just inspired. I was actually really inspired by playing with Willie P. Bennett and playing with Blackie and the Rodeo Kings, and I felt like I was sort of playing a way that I play with those, when I would play with Will and when I play with Blackie.
Nice.
On that song. I felt like I felt just so comfortable, doing it. But I felt really comfortable playing with those guys the whole time,
Just as an aside, Colin, do you happen to know if any of those 11 dates that you recorded with Bob, or that you played with Bob, got recorded somehow, some way, and that maybe somewhere down the way, when another Dylan bootleg album comes out, we might hear one of those tracks?
I don't know that anything officially was recorded. I know that there is stuff on YouTube and all that, which is, it's nice to know that it really existed. But I don't think that I know of that anything officially was recorded. But that doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't. I know that a lot of the official bootlegs that have come out over the years. My very good friend Steve Berkowitz is one of the guys responsible for producing those, and he's done a tremendous job. And there's all kinds of stuff out there that exists. So as far, no one ever mentioned it to me that if it was, but who knows? You just don't know.
There's always a soundboard. There's always that soundboard rolling something. It's possible.
It is possible.
Okay.
It sure was memorable for me, but I mean, he's got so much wonderful stuff, and the band. Last time I saw the band, I haven't seen them with the Rough and Rowdy Ways band yet, with a couple different players. But last time I saw them with Charlie Sexton and George Rosselli and Donnie Heron and Tony Garnier, of course, they were just tremendous. And so, the live stuff that I've heard, when I've seen them play in the last few years, they've been really amazing.
Okay, this is mere supposition, but it's Bob's 80th birthday, right? I'm going to throw you under the bus here. What would you give him for an 80th birthday present?
Well, I guess it would all depend. For me, I would give him all the love in my heart, because I think he's such a great artist, and he treated me very, very well, and it was a lifetime highlight. And I wish him, I would give him the love and respect of the whole world.
Thank you. That's a great, and wrap it up with a ribbon. And listen, and just as an aside, who could have known that he was then about to, working on and then release Rough and Rowdy Ways? At this late stage in his life and his career, he puts out one of the great albums ever, just as another release.
I would not underestimate Bob Dylan at all. It's a funny thing. I remember reading from when was this? It certainly must have been at some point. Jerry Garcia saying, at some point, maybe, I don't know, maybe the early 90s or something, saying that he thinks that Bob has tons of music in him, and don't ever underestimate what he's going to do. I guess somebody said, you think it's just sort of nostalgia. And of course, in the early 90s, that was before Time Out of Mind. That was before Love and Theft. It was before Tempest. It was before Modern Times. But, before all of these absolutely groundbreaking earth-shaking records, and before Rough and Rowdy Ways, of course. And I loved the records that he did, Fallen Angels, and the records that he did of early American pop music. I feel right. Those were beautiful records.
And they were freeing for him, too. He wasn't going to...
Yeah.
You're not going to put him in the box. Simple as that. Colin Linden, thank you so much. First of all, I'm happy for your 11 days with Bob Dylan, and I'm happy you're here to celebrate his 80th birthday. And I'll be around for yours, okay? When you hit 80, we'll be having a party.
That would be just the greatest thing, Terry. Nothing would please me more. And that will be so great, and I look forward to it so very much.
Okay, don't go away. He's Colin Linden. This is Mulligan Stew, CKUA, and this is the Mulligan Stew podcast. Happy birthday, Bob. Thank you, Colin. Just as an aside, Colin, do you happen to know if any of those 11 dates that you recorded with Bob, or that you played with Bob, got recorded somehow, some way, and that maybe somewhere down the way, when another Dylan bootleg album comes out, we might hear one of those tracks?
I don't know that anything officially was recorded. I know that there is stuff on YouTube and all that, which is, it's nice to know that it really existed. But I don't think that I know of that anything officially was recorded. But that doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't. I know that a lot of the official bootlegs that have come out over the years. My very good friend Steve Berkowitz is one of the guys responsible for producing those, and he's done a tremendous job. And there's all kinds of stuff out there that exists. So as far no one ever mentioned it to me that if it was, but who knows? You just don't know.
There's always a soundboard. There's always that soundboard rolling something. It's possible.
It is possible.
Okay.
It sure was memorable for me, but I mean, he's got so much wonderful stuff, and the band. Last time I saw the band, I haven't seen them with the Rough and Rowdy Ways band yet, with a couple different players. But last time I saw them with Charlie Sexton and George Rosselli and Donnie Herron and Tony Garnier, of course, they were just tremendous. And so, the live stuff that I've heard, when I've seen them play in the last few years, they've been really amazing. Colin
Linden from Blackie and the Rodeo Kings has worked with T-Bone Burnett, was the musical director on the Nashville television series, does his own producing, recording, writing, singing, playing in Nashville, has played the White House, but he also played 11 road dates as a guitarist in the Bob Dylan Band. Thank you, Colin. Now here's a guy who knows about playing guitar in the Bob Dylan Band, Robbie Robertson from the band. What effect did Bob have on you and the band, and conversely, what effect do you think you had on him?
Well, in the beginning, it was very clear to us that Bob had limited experience in playing with a band, and he was learning on the run too.
Yep.
And so every day that we had an experience in doing a concert and playing with him, just a little bit more came together. Because in the beginning, there was no beginning, middle, or end to the songs. We didn't know when it was going to start and when it was going to end. So we just had to be on our toes. After a while, Bob started to understand, how we give one another signals, that we're on a wavelength, and that we speak to one another in an invisible language that you can hear. So he was learning that as we were going along, and obviously Bob was changing a lot of the rules in songwriting, a lot of the rules in music, and he was opening doors. And we were right there as those doors were opening. So we were like the first ones to be able to walk right in. And, you couldn't help, people that had nothing to do with him were highly influenced by his work. We were right there. So obviously our experience in being a band and being on the road and playing tight and playing together, all of that was rubbing off on him. And as he was going along and he was making new discoveries too, it was rubbing off on us.
The unmistakable voice of Robbie Robertson, who worked so closely with Bob Dylan over the course of his career. They taught each other how to become a band. This is our Mulligan Stew podcast talking about the 80th birthday and the celebration of Bob Dylan's birthday. Tedeschi Trucks Band, Susan Tedeschi, Derek Trucks, know the history of where they came musically. They can talk about all the bands that came before them, that influenced them, but there are two that get mentioned here. Well, one is Leonard Cohen, and the other is Bob Dylan. But here's how it all ties together, starting with Susan Tedeschi. And what's the one song you want to get to? There's always barometers as to how the voice is, how the mix is, how the room is. What one song kind of lets you know that everything's okay?
Good barometer for me vocally is always "Bird on a Wire." That Leonard Cohen song.
That was a tune that when I listened back to the shows, when I heard the "Bird on a Wire" from Oakland, I was like, yeah, this is a good place to start. It felt Sue's voice that night and the background singers together. It was a pretty special moment. And, it was a big, rowdy crowd, but when it was time for the audience to get quiet, they got quiet. It was a very attentive audience for a rowdy crowd, and that's a good balance. That's kind of our band in a nutshell. A bunch of crazy people that can sometimes get quiet.
We in Canada, because he was Canadian, because he was one of our heroes, the Leonard's passing had a profound effect here. How about you?
Yeah, I think for everybody.
Yeah.
It just came at a really bad time, too, you know?
Yeah.
Just, Leon Russell passed away, and then Leonard passed away, and Trump became president. It was all kind of
it was
overwhelming.
A dark week.
I thought the end of the world actually was coming. So.
But, it's amazing that the title of his last record was "You Want It Darker."
You Want It Darker.
Like right to the end, that dude was fully tapped in.
He really was.
But yeah, I think Leon and Sharon Jones hit us really hard because we knew them. Yeah, we knew them personally. We knew them well, and we were in contact with them to the end. But I think Leonard Cohen, out of all the artists that have passed the last handful of years that we didn't personally know, it hit me the hardest. That just gives. I'm a Dylan fan. I love all of these guys, but Leonard Cohen was the one where I would sit down and read his books. He was just one of those rare characters. We were lucky to have him. There's a great speech when he was receiving some honor from the King of Spain, and there's this
for poetry or something.
Yeah, there's this 12-minute acceptance speech that he gives that's as good as any song he ever wrote. It's worth looking up. It's a pretty amazing Leonard Cohen moment.
And then Dylan had that moment too.
It's very true.
So he got to have a speech. Honestly, those two for me are two of the biggest songwriters of my life.
Yeah, they're the giants.
Yep.
There's nobody better than those two.
Susan Tedeschi, Derek Trucks, the Tedeschi Trucks Band, talking about their live influences, Bird on a Wire, Leonard Cohen, and of course, Bob Dylan. Now, I found this interview or a portion of an interview with David Bowie quite some time ago. He's talking about Bob Dylan. It's only 30 seconds long, but you can get David Bowie's take on Bob Dylan. And this is a number of years ago. I think you can tell.
I got just an aside here. I can't believe the way Bob Dylan is being treated these days by critics and some fans. It's like, what have you done for us lately?
I cannot believe that. I'm such a fan of Dylan. I'm more than a fan. It's a man who, well, I guess, no, because most of the backstabbing on Dylan is coming from his own generation. I've noticed a lot of the critics who are saying such harmful things about Dylan are in his age group, which I think is just so sad,
A young David Bowie and yours truly, years ago, in a hotel room, past midnight, just talking. We ran out of tape, ran out of batteries, actually. David Bowie on Bob Dylan. The Avett Brothers was the dressing rooms at the Queen Elizabeth Theatre in Vancouver. And they were about to play upstairs. This was after their sound check. And we got a chance to talk about two Dylan things. One was working on Chimes of Freedom, the album, the covers, and playing the Grammys with Bob Dylan as his band. Here you go. Avett Brothers.
The response to Chimes of Freedom didn't surprise me, but it was over the top. The album is doing exceptionally well, and you get to do your track.
And since we'd done the Grammys with Bob, he signed off on it and encouraged us to be a big part of it, like encouraged us to replace some of his parts with us. Like I think he signed off and let them sing.
Our understanding was that the verse that he sings there, he was never happy with. So I ended up singing it. We're in the studio and we're working on it, and we're sitting there, and you've got your little mixing board right beside you just for your headphone mix. And I'm looking over, and there's a piece of tape, and it says Bob vocal, Scott banjo, Johnny vocal, Seth guitar, Seth vocal. And I was just, at one point we were in between takes, and I just looked over at it, and I'm like, my God, look at that. I even took my phone out and took a little picture of it, just as a little token. But it was really surreal and really fun and really loose. And the song was felt very normal very, very normal in our understanding of performing a song. So we jumped right in there.
For you to use the phrase, when we were with Bob on the Grammys, is ridiculously crazy.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah,
it's the Grammys, and it's Dylan.
Yeah. A lot of things that have happened to us in that one night alone, but through our existence as artists in this journey have been, they would have been unbelievable if someone had told us we were going to do them.
The Avett Brothers in the dressing room complex downstairs at the Queen Elizabeth Theatre in Vancouver. This is our birthday celebration for Bob Dylan on the Mulligan Stew podcast. We're going to finish with the two Canadian artists, well, three actually. We're going to start with Greg Keeler, who is the co-writer, co-leader, co-founder of Canada's iconic Blue Rodeo, has played many of the same stages as Bob Dylan, and loves the man's work, as you can tell. Here's Greg Keeler from Blue Rodeo. I'm slowly gathering comments on the influence of Bob Dylan. Any thoughts about just his influence? Because you mentioned him in the interview.
Me, as a singer-songwriter performer, would not exist without Bob Dylan. And his influence is too huge for anybody to understand and translate. Just on culture, just on everything. Like he's just one of those performers who changed the world, and he changed my world.
Mine too.
In a huge way. Like everything from attitude to the way I cut my hair to the way I put a scarf around my neck to the way I sing, to the way I evaluate myself as a musician and as a songwriter. There's many times when I'll be starting a song and I'll go, why bother? Like, you're never going to be able to do what Bob Dylan did. And, so what's the point of this? And that happens a lot with me. Like, I just think, what is the point? And truly, what is the point? What am I contributing? Well, I've made a living, and there's a little culture around us, but, does anyone ever touch the songs that Bob Dylan wrote? Well, there's a few in that club, but not too many. And he's beyond. Like, it's ridiculous. It's just so amazing.
Thank you for that. I love the fact that also as humans we timestamp ourselves. Which Dylan we fell in love with, or when we fell in love, or when we were, or that summer that you discovered that you could do something well. What Dylan record was on the radio that summer, for example. People timestamp certain things, and he's one of them. When you can become part of that fabric, then you've really transcended just singing and songwriting, and you're there. Don't sell yourself short.
I'm glad that I was asked to the party, and I know I won't be at the head table, but I'm glad that I'm at the party.
Thank you for this. I appreciate it very much. And stay well, please. Upright, breathing.
Okay, Terry.
Be good. Thank you, man.
Same to you.
Thank you. Talk about a singular artist like Bob Dylan. The same thing with Greg Keeler. Truly one of a kind. I thank him for his comments, and I wish Blue Rodeo all the best in 2021, 2022, whenever they get back on the road. And finally, I'm going to talk about Barney Bentall and Steve Dawson. They got together when Steve was still in Vancouver. He's now in Nashville. And Steve organized a one-off concert. And they were going to do Blood on the Tracks. And various artists were going to come in and sing one song. And they were going to do the Blood on the Tracks album as the way it was laid out on the album. Great songs in it. Unbelievable songs on Blood on the Tracks. And a pivotal moment in Bob Dylan's life, which they're going to explain. So Barney is going to be second. So we're going to start with Steve Dawson, whose idea it was to do Blood on the Tracks live on stage, and then finish off with Barney Bentall, this edition of the Mulligan Stew podcast. Happy birthday, Bob Dylan. At the Electric Owl on Main Street in Vancouver, Barney Bentall and yourself are going to be gathering on stage. The evening is dedicated to reimagining Bob Dylan's seminal 1975 recording, Blood on the Tracks. Have I got that right so far?
Yes, you do. Really, part of the whole charm and the concept is for it not to be overly rehearsed or anything.
Exactly.
There's a little bit of magic that happens on the first and second and maybe the third time that you play something. And also, like, really in the spirit of this record that we've chosen to do in its entirety, the Blood on the Tracks album, that, you know, when you listen to that record kind of closely, you realize that the band has no idea what they're doing.
Not a clue? And the more, and
well, they have a clue, but that's about it.
They didn't understand what he was doing.
Yeah, you can sort of hear them, like, kind of guessing when he might end.
Steve Dawson is on the phone. He and Barney Bentall will be getting together to recreate the music of Bob Dylan's Blood on the Tracks. For all of this, Blood on the Tracks, released January 1975, his 15th album, is considered, like, you hear the references later on in his life of almost as good as or the best since Blood on the Tracks.
Right.
It's the songs, isn't it?
It's the songs, it's the sound. It's a really kind of heartbreaking album. I don't know enough about his personal life to know what he was going through, but he was definitely going through something at the time with, like, relationships and stuff. And it's a beautiful sounding record, despite all the musicians not really knowing the songs. It just really captures a vibe and a sound.
So the tunes, I mean, there's lots of tunes to choose from. For those of you who are wondering, Blood on the Tracks, yeah. Tangle Up in Blue, Simple Twist of Fate, Big Girl Now, Idiot Wind, You're Gonna Make Me Lonesome When You Go, Shelter from the Storm, Buckets of Rain, If You See Her Say Hello, and on and on and on.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's a album chock full of even the songs that are more obscure are great songs. There's not a dud on the record. Unless I'm mistaken, the record starts with Tangled Up in Blue, which he would never have known it at the time, but that's become one of his massive iconic tunes.
Barney Bentall in Santiago, Chile. We know what was going on in Dylan's life. You can see it in the music. What was going on in your life, and how did this album affect you?
Well, I had just gotten out of high school, basically, kind of starting to work on music and trying to figure out who I was. Music was such a part of that process. It was just a record I listened to over and over again. Things like my sister really helped with my musical education. So much of Bob Dylan's work, but that record, it's just so amazingly fantastic. I sometimes feel, I said to Steve, is this hubris, or it's so absurd to try and do this, and I thought, well, it's been a long time, and I just do it humbly and with complete and utter respect, and hope we don't crash, and just try and do it the best we can.
Get home safely, will you?
Okay, well, thanks, Terry, and thanks for plugging this.
I'll play some Bob for you.
Okay, perfect.
Barney Bentall, we are Mulligan Stew, CKUA. I'm Terry David Mulligan. My thanks to David Bowie, Colin Linden, the Avett brothers, Barney Bentall and Steve Dawson, Greg Keeler, Susan Tedeschi, Derek Trucks, and Robbie Robertson, and of course Bob Dylan. I just want to quote the last couple of words from an article in the New York Times by David Brinkley, who is a professor of humanities and professor of history at Rice University. He's the author of American Moonshot, John F. Kennedy, and the Great Space Race. And he's a good friend of Bob Dylan's. And the last question in this article for New York Times, the last question is, how's your health holding up, Bob? You seem to be fit as a fiddle. How do you keep mind and body working together in unison? Oh, that's a big question, isn't it, says Bob. How does anybody do it? Your mind and body go hand in hand. There has to be some kind of agreement. I like to think of the mind as a spirit and the body as substance. How do you integrate these two things? I have no idea. I just try to go on a straight line and stay on it. Stay on the level. Well, Bob, keep on staying on the level. Happy birthday, Bob Dylan. So I'm thinking to myself, this is Tasting Room Radio, and this is the Mulligan Stew podcast and our YouTube channel. How do you follow Bob Dylan's birthday? How do you do that? You've got David Bowie's introducing him, Tedeschi Trucks Band, you got Greg Keeler. All of them have something to say about Dylan. How do you follow it up? Well, you head for Tofino for the Wine and Dine. That's happening in 2024, June 1st and 2nd. I know it's right around the corner, but this is your heads up. You shouldn't miss this weekend. June 1st and 2nd in Tofino. And I have the two co-founders and the organizers, some would call them producers, Ronnie Lee and Ryan Orr. Thank you guys for doing this. As I said, if your phone rings, just tell them you'll call them back because we have something we got to talk about.
Thank you for having us.
Ryan, were you saying that there'd been 4 of these previously? How many?
No, this is our second one.
Second one. Okay.
And our fourth event, Ronnie and I myself putting on 2 Tofino Oyster Festivals as well.
Ronnie, are you basically you're counting on locals to join you? Everybody on the coast there?
We've got quite a demographic. I mean, Tofino brings in tourism from Toronto, Calgary, Vancouver, Victoria, all over Vancouver Island, Okanagan. So we're going to see a lot of people coming in from all of those areas. And then I'd say, 50% of the event right now is looking local as well. So that's quite a bit of people that are already traveling.
Actually, you know what? That's a smart idea. Just because, you can sell the locals, but anybody who wants a Tofino experience over the course of 2 days, this is it.
Exactly. And if you want to come to Tofino, often what happens is people get here and, you might get to take in one or two of the two, or maybe even 3 of the great restaurants and get to see some of the food that Tofino has to offer. But with our 2-day experience at the festival, not only do you get to see some great food from, 20 chefs from Tofino and Euclid here on the West Coast, but you also have almost a dozen chefs coming from Vancouver, Toronto, Texas, all over North America. So
I would assume
it's a great way to pack it in.
I would assume that the Texans are bringing the meat.
Yeah. I actually own a wood-fired Texas-inspired barbecue joint here in Tofino, so I'll have a little bit of brisket in my back pocket too.
Okay, Ryan, this is a 2-day event. Is each day different, one from the other?
Yeah. So same location, same times. Day 1 is we call that Sip on the Shore. It's more seafood and wine focused, although there will be a wide variety of both food and beverage options. And then we switch gears a little bit on Sunday to our Grillin' in the Garden, which is going to be a lot more meat and cocktail focused. And we also have a cocktail competition on that day.
I'll tell you what caught my eye, guys. First of all, I'd like to see the Cowichan wineries there. Emmendare, Unsworth, Sea Star on Gulf Islands, Blue Grouse, Shelter Point, Up Island, of course, the distillery, Salt Spring, Cider, Hoyne, and then I ran out of ink. What else? Marydale. I mean, there's lots more. Are there any favorites of yours?
I'm definitely a big fan of Averill Creek myself. And Phillips Brewery's got some fantastic beer, as well as Vancouver Island Brewery coming up from Victoria.
Right.
You know what? I mean, I like them all. I mean, I certainly a big fan of the local distillery. The Tofino Distillery is a big one. It's. I mean, I like beer. I like wine. I like spirits. I like it all. So I mean, really hard for me to pick a favorite, to tell you the truth.
It's a tough time. It's a tough time in the Okanagan right now because literally right now, between when we're talking and June the 1st and 2nd, every one of those vineyards that got absolutely run over by the deep freeze of the last 2 winters, they're walking step by step through their vineyards, trying to figure out what's dead, what's alive.
Yeah, I was up there in April in the Oliver Osoyoos region. And yeah, it's a pretty dire situation. Like you said, 2 years in a row, it's been really tough. So we did have a couple of Okanagan producers pull out, but we still have quite a few of them at the event, and we're really, really grateful that they're still coming out and supporting us and being a part of this.
Okay, Ronnie Lee and Ryan Orr, who are the co-founders and the organizers of the 2024 Wine and Dine in Tofino, Wine and Dine. Let's go to the Okanagan. Yeah, the Okanagan. Synchromesh, Roche, love those guys. Liquidity, Road 13, Cedar Creek, Martin's Lane, maybe the best Pinot Noir in the country, and one of the best in North America, and one of the best in the world. Checkmate, that's a good one. Mission Hill, of course, their parent company. Creek and Gully. Who else from the Okanagan did you want to see there?
Well, we got Road 13. Yeah, Kronos. There's quite a few there. I think you got most of them, but quite a few. Like I said, we're delighted and honored by how many are coming, despite the the tough couple of years they've had up there.
Come on, Ronnie, fit the bill. What else do you want to talk about in terms of the Okanagan?
Oh, well, I'd like to just go back to one that you already mentioned, Creek and Gully Cider. Those guys are fantastic. And
those girls are fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. But I meant the father as well. I met them at an event down in Victoria and convinced them to come over last year. So we're really happy to see them come through again this year as well.
They do get around. I see a Ghost Tequila, North Point Brewery, a Driftwood Brewery, Tofino Distillery, Wayward Distillery. Lots of brew, and lots of spirits.
Exactly. Yeah. Wayward's got a really nice product, and as Ryan mentioned earlier, the Tofino Distillery as well. But yeah, no, really, really happy on the selection that we're going to be showcasing this year.
So I've gone down to the food segment now, guys, on your great website. You see oysters, Sandwich Point Restaurants. We've got the great room at the Long Beach Lodge. There's a couple of really interesting ones. There's Little Ronnie's Barbecue. There's Brown's Social House. Nice. Taste of Tofino, Heartwood. Who else stands out for you?
Well, I mean, we've got Marty Dean coming from Neck of the Woods Catering. He's one of the founding chefs from Wolf and the Fog when they first opened, Nick Nutting's restaurant. Yep. And Nick Nutting will be there showcasing some local seafood as well. Yeah, Nick's a good friend of mine, so we've been spending a lot of time chatting. And Nicole Gomez is coming in from Vancouver, so we're really happy to showcase her. She's a very close personal friend and mentor. You guys may have seen her on the Food Network. She's been on Top Chef a couple of times. She was winner of Top Chef All Stars. We've got Robert Belcham from Vancouver coming over.
He's a troublemaker. He is. He's the man throws things.
Can I tell you something about that guy? I met him about 6 years ago at a Brewery and the Beast event, and we were cooking side by side. I had my smoker there, and he had this pot of oil on the ground that he was deep frying some form of pig in. And I just remember looking at it as like a pot of oil on top of an open fire, and him and his son was maybe like 10 years old or 7 or 8 years old or something, standing beside him with this like pot of oil over an open fire. And they're just like standing there having a father-son moment. Yeah. I just remember looking over and thinking like, I can't wait to do that with my son someday, but like, man, is that dangerous. But yeah. It was. I'll never forget the first time I met him there. He's a good fellow, good for a laugh.
Chef Carl, Greg, Rosie's Barbecue and Smokehouse.
Carl's coming over, and he's going to be doing a couple of different barbecue items. He's featuring a brisket and rice dish, Korean style, and he's also going to be doing pork belly that still has the rib attached, which is going to be a really cool item that we're going to be featuring. Oh, and then, funny story about Carl, he's actually leaving the event Sunday evening when he finishes, and he's driving down to Texas to pick up a brand new smoker. So he's driving straight from Tofino
of course he
Texas.
Is.
Yeah, he's picking up a mill scale, which is like it's a really, really beautiful smoker built down in Texas.
One more guy, Brent Bushel, Bushel Barbecue. He has the size of a barbecue that looks like a small train. Where's he coming from? Where's he from?
So I met him originally in Toronto, but he now lives in just outside of Calgary, and he actually built my smokers for Little Ronnie's Beachside Barbecue in Tofino. He's fantastic. He's a great guy, great barbecue guy, and he'll be coming up with his wife Amy as well. And actually, speaking of Toronto, we've also got Lawrence LaPienta coming up. And Lawrence, he's actually got 2 Michelin bibs for his restaurant, Cherry Street Barbecue in Toronto.
Okay, now Ryan, we're talking smoke and brisket and all that stuff, but there's NAS food. There's the kind of food you would expect to find in Tofino.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, NAS is this is their second year at the event. I don't know exactly what dish they're going to be doing this year. I imagine it's going to involve some kind of local kelp product. Might be a nice surprise. Ronnie might know, but I don't know the exact dish. But yeah, pretty excited to have them here. And like I said, lots of just such great buy-in from the local restaurants.
Tell me,
like Ronnie said, you come out here and, if you're lucky, you get to 2 or 3 of these places.
There you go. Tell me about Nanam Ukmin.
So that's a local First Nations run. Her name's Kayla Frank. I've known Kayla for years. She used to work for me at a restaurant I managed here probably almost 10 years ago now. Young, bright star, and kind of went out on her own and started a catering company. So really, really stoked to have her back. Again, she's coming back for the second year. And she's born and raised out here, Tloquit, and really excited to have her as a part
And
of
while
it.
you're on a roll, the Beach Shack, 2 guys.
Yeah, that one's. You know what? I'm going to actually hand that one over to Ronnie because he's got a little bit more detail on that.
Okay, Ronnie.
Yeah, the Beach Shack's actually my cafe. It's one of my businesses here in town. It's located on the Pacific Sands Beach Resort, and it's front and center when you pull up. And we're actually just opening a brand new bakery that's the sister restaurant, the Bake Shack. So those two places will be at the event, serving up some cold brew and lots of delicious sweets.
Wait a minute, is Little Ronnie's Barbecue yours as well?
It is, yeah. Yeah.
Is there a Little Ryan's Barbecue? Is Ryan got one?
No. If it was, it would be Big Ryan's. The Zoom doesn't quite capture the height difference here of the two of us.
Ronnie Lee and Ryan Orr, who are the co-founders and the organizers of the 2024 Wine and Dine in Tofino, Wine and Dine. June the 1st and 2nd. What's the price?
Well, so with various, you can do weekend pass. It's from as little as $150 for a pass to $350 for a weekend VIP ticket. So there's VIP access both days, gets you in an hour early both days. It gets you 4 hours as opposed to the regular 3. Otherwise, it's $150 a day or $200 for the VIP, and then $250 for a general admission weekend pass or $350 for a VIP weekend pass.
Okay.
It's all you can eat. It's all you can drink. As far as I'm concerned, it's a hell of a deal.
Give them the website, Ronnie.
www.tofinowinedine.com.
And there's I think there's an information email as well. But these guys they're not going to be seeing many keyboards from this point on. They're just going to be running and gunning. So this is cool. Let's do this next year.
Absolutely.
But instead of talking into a camera and a thinger, let's just do it there.
Absolutely. Okay. We've got your ticket ready. The ticket's got your name on it, Terry. Ready to go.
Thank you, boys. Thank you very much. Thank you for doing this. Congratulations, Ronnie Lee, Ryan Orr. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having us.
Have a great day.
Have a great June weekend.
See you next year, June 7th and 8th, 2025.
Thank you, boys. Thank you. This is Mulligan's Stew.